AITA for forcing my fiancé into cutting off his late wife's family? I, 25F, am getting married to my fiancé, 29M, in May. When we first got together he told me that he was married from 20 to 22 years old to his high school sweetheart. We met when he was 25, but she passed of sepsis from a botched surgery. He didn't cope well and stayed in contact with her family, namely father and two sisters, 19 and 24. It was a soft spot for me for a while at the beginning because there was so much history they had that we would not have, and it was tough knowing that she was all around him. I never told him and decided to work through it on my own, especially with the fact that he would often spend time with her family during our relationship. Her birthday, their anniversary, and anniversary of her death, he'd spend the day with her family. It was uncomfortable at first knowing the man I loved was reminiscing about love he had with someone else, but I kept trying to see it from his perspective, and the last couple years I am completely secure in our relationship and it doesn't bother me much anymore. Well, he proposed this time last year and I was over the moon. I love this man with all my heart, but I recently learned that he never told them that we got engaged. I've been trying local coffee shops the past few months rather than my usual run and tried a new one. His LW's sister worked there, and other than being awkward, she did a double take of my engagement ring and looked really unhappy. I didn't mention it and left. My fiancé told me that she kept messaging him on social media about it and I wasn't happy that he kept it a secret. He apologized and was very depleted by it all. He said that he didn't want to hide me, but he didn't want to hurt them either, and that both of us were a huge part of his life. I understand that and let him off the hook slightly, just told him to be upfront with them from now on. That was that. At least I thought so. A week ago, on Sunday, I got a message from the 24 years old asking if I was happy with myself, that I would never replace his LW, and that if she was still alive he'd chose her over me every time. She even said that he only kept me around for me money and something to stick his stick in. I ignored it, but I can't say that it didn't affect me. When you're in my position, all these points are ones you have to work through, and it's not easy to get over those insecurities. It feels like a knock in the teeth when they're used against you. I mentioned it to him and he comforted me and reassured me. He said he'd set boundaries with her and I'd never have to hear from her again. Fine by me. That was until I found my car with street rag and grave robber smeared in red paint. I had saved for this car for a year and it was expensive, very expensive. The tires were slashed and the windows cracked. I asked the store a few doors down for their CCTV camera footage of that night, but it was blurry and didn't catch much. It did manage to catch half a license plate though, and the color and make of a car. It was his LW's youngest sister's car. I told him I was filing a police report and he asked me to hold off until he talked to them first. I told him no, but I would if they paid for the damages and apologized to my face. He set up the meeting for last night and it didn't go well, to say the least. Everyone was shouting. The sisters told me they, yes both of them, had nothing to be sorry for and that I should leave their family alone, including my fiancé and their family. He told them that it wasn't fair to him to be lonely forever and that he'd hoped they'd be supportive of him finding love again. They told him he was betraying LW and that he never loved her if he'd marry someone else. They didn't have a problem with him having a new GF because he'd realize she was the only one for him and get tired of me. Now that hadn't happened, they were putting their foot down. The youngest told him to tell me that they were right and that he'd never love anyone like LW. My fiancé broke down at the table. I picked him up and made us leave. I told them I'd be filing a report and suing for damages, and the next time they saw us would be in court. When we got back and calmed down I gave him an ultimatum. Either he cuts contact or we call off the wedding and go out separate ways. I wasn't going to live my life with this harassment and someday subject my children to their bullying. He said they would never bully a child, but I shot him down and said he didn't expect any of this either. He called their father, who was fairly chill about it all but still defending his daughters. They say I shouldn't control him and that I'm horrible for cutting them off. I don't know what to do. I can't live like this and I don't think I should have to just because we're getting married. Mini update. Hey everyone, just a mini update to clear some things up before I have a discussion with my fiancé either later today or tomorrow about my ultimatum. I didn't sleep at all yesterday or the night before, for obvious reasons. There's a ding on my phone at least once an hour from them saying one thing or another, mainly the 19 years old, and I don't know what they've told people, but I've got a message from one of their uncles and grandparents calling me horrible stuff too. So obviously they've been spreading what's happened this week and twisting it. I haven't blocked them because I want to gain as much evidence as I can for the inevitable case. Regardless of any outcome with my fiancé, I will be suing and filing a criminal case for harassment and vandalism and looking for a restraining order. I just haven't had the mental fortitude to do so yet. I'm hoping my fiancé will help me. I haven't spoken to my fiancé since the argument at the table, other than to tell him they go or I do. It was my choice to give him a couple days space to come to terms with everything, and I will contact him when I'm ready. All of this, from the first message till now, has been a week. It's a huge weight to contemplate leaving people you've known for 15 years and who you grew up with. He did set hard boundaries with the sister from the coffee shop, as I've seen the messages. He said, paraphrasing, "You have no right talking to OP at all if this is how you're going to behave. She doesn't deserve this and you've gone too far. Why are you being like this?" And she responded with more name calling and back and forth. He ended by saying not to message me again and to make sure everyone else does the same. I was happy with that. At this point only one person in that family had an issue, to my knowledge, so it was silly to have him cut all of them off. It may not be enough for some, but it was enough for me to feel safe and comfortable. For those saying he needs therapy and counseling, he's already getting it. He's been getting it since before we even started dating after an incident at work. I don't know about any of their family though. The first time I had a conversation with any of them was that night. Some people are wondering what LW died of, and it was a botched weight loss surgery where she died of sepsis. People were wondering if he was somehow the reason behind the surgery, hence the family's insane reaction, but he was not in the slightest. He likes bigger women and wouldn't pressure something like that onto her, speaking from experience. I also want to clear up the not calling the police about the car thing. It was entirely my idea to not file charges in exchange for a face-to-face apology and damage payment. He only wanted me to wait so that he could talk to her to see if she regretted it and then have her father pay the damages. At the time, we thought it was just the 19 years old that smashed up my car, not both daughters. Neither of us wanted to ruin her life. When I found out it was both of them, it was full steam ahead. Thank you all for your messages, and hopefully I'll have a positive update for you tomorrow. Edit. I chose for him to take this space apart, it's not him being indecisive. I said to take time and that I'd reach out so that his decision is thought out. It's for me. I don't want to be chosen only to be 3 kids down the line and stuck in a resentment-filled marriage. It's for me. Please understand that. Update. Well, what a wild morning I've had. My fiancé came over bright and early this morning and I've never been so damn tired. You may want to take a seat because this will be long. Sorry in advance. First of all, I want to set the record straight here. A lot of people are coming for my fiancé over not cutting them off from the get-go, which I don't think is fair. He's a very mild-mannered, calm, and calculating person, and that's who I always knew he was. Nothing has changed. If he had been Rocky Balboa and flipped the cafe table shouting obscenities, he would not have been the man I fell in love with. He did exactly what I expected him to do and exactly what I was comfortable with. You may be attracted to other things in men and expect other things, and that's awesome, but not me. Update. I texted him saying I thought it was time to discuss this, and he was back at home not a half hour later. He'd been staying with a friend the couple nights we had no contact. We sat on our bed to talk because my back is sore from all the packing and I wasn't gonna force myself to sit at the table. Before we even got to talking, he asked if we could cuddle for a minute. It definitely took some of the weight off and we were able to talk like a couple and not awkward strangers because, regardless of some people's beliefs, we do love each other, and it took me a very long time to feel confident in that fact. Before anyone calls me a doormat again, no, I was still sure I would stick to my ultimatum. The first thing I asked was if he felt he had enough time to make his decision, and he said he didn't need time. He was very shocked and bewildered at how so much could change in just a week and how everything he knew was shook up that he couldn't think and went numb. He did apologize that he didn't take a more defensive stance at the cafe and he doesn't want to make excuses for it. An explanation was that he genuinely didn't expect such a vitriolic response. He hid the engagement because he knew they weren't over LW's death and would be upset at the news. It wasn't like I would feel upset by them not knowing, which I wasn't really. He's known these girls since before they were in double digits and he would never have thought them capable of it. It came so far out of left field that he froze. I asked him if there was any possibility that either of them had a thing for him and he looked very confused and disturbed. I said how I've had people tell me it's not uncommon for siblings to do this after loss, and he thought on it. Turns out you were right. He said the 24 years old, about 8 months after LW's death, made a move and tried to kiss him. He immediately left and told her mother about it. Mother and father are divorced now but weren't then. She was a minor at the time and messaged him saying she would be 18 soon, so it wasn't a big deal. Her mother made her see the school counselor and didn't allow her to be alone with him for a while. It was years ago, so he'd forgotten it even happened. He said he was sure that wasn't the case now because it had been so long, but I'm not so convinced. Not that it matters anymore. He opened up his Facebook and gave it to me to read. 24 years old had been messaging him, which he ignored. She ranged from telling him off to crying and saying how betrayed the family was to trying to manipulate him against me. He said he was sure that he needed to put them behind him and had been thinking it on and off since he proposed, but couldn't bring himself to do it. After this week, the fire was lit and he knew what he had to do. It was all just abstract until suddenly it was very real. He asked me how I've been coping and I told him. I felt like I'd done everything right, but somehow things turned out worse than if I'd been the jealous type and stopped their contact at the beginning. I tried to be understanding and put in so much effort to be secure in myself and our relationship, only for everything I worked on to be thrown in my face like I was a mistress that was cheating with him. He didn't blink the entire time and just listened. He said he should have been more observant and realized I was struggling with this so that he could help me, but I've always been the strong one, so he neglected to, and he'll do better. As I've said in a few comments now, his parents had him in their late 40s and are retired. He hates to involve them in negativity, but I was stunned when he said he's been talking to them about this since the first Facebook message. They were very understanding, but his father took a tough love approach. He said the best quote I think I've ever heard. "Get your act together before the jig is up." They offered to come stay for a while and help us move. I don't think that's necessary, but I really appreciated the thought. On the subject of moving, I made it clear that I would not be living in this house any longer than I had to, and he completely agreed. His parents offered to find us a place in their state if we wanted to have more of a support network, and I'm honestly considering it after all this. They're only a state away from my own family, so we'd be a lot better off. His job is remote and I should be able to find work there easily enough. I've been in contact with a friend who's a mechanic and they've quoted me between 1-2K for the damages, but that's an at-cost estimate as a discount. A few people have said to get a real statement and to shop around. The real cost is between 4-5K, and that's just for the noticeable damage. My friend thinks they've done something to the engine, so thank God I couldn't drive it anywhere. He thinks I may be entitled to a replacement car altogether. If so, I will be sure to sue for it, and that's not gonna be cheap. After all the emotional things were discussed, he mentioned when would I be comfortable enough to go to the police. I made clear he was okay with that, or I'd go on my own. He said, the surest I've ever seen him, that this is what needed to be done and he wasn't going to let them continue. He'd done enough to try and shield them, but he wasn't going to let it come at my expense. I'm currently in the bath frothing in bath bombs, but we'll be going to the station as soon as I'm done. He's downstairs right now printing out the new quotes from the mechanics and the messages 24 years old sent him over the past couple days so we can go prepared. People have said that nothing will come of it, and you may be right. But I have to try. Hoping my local police don't have anything better to do. It's a small town. To finish, I made a point of asking again if he would cut them off or I had to go. He didn't miss a beat and said that they're no longer going to be a part of his life, even if I decided to leave. He did ask for one last meeting to say goodbye to her parents and to put a close on that part of his life, and to explain to the girls that this is not my fault but his decision after seeing how cruel they were capable of being. After that, we would block them on everything and move forward. I was completely fine with that. So, there we have it. Writing all this out and being able to talk to people about everything has been both helpful and a good distraction from the dumpster fire that was my life, and everything worked out as well as I could have hoped. We'll see how his meeting goes with them. I'm sure they won't be very happy about it, but that's not my problem. Thank you all, and I'll update after they've met up.